Hello, ¿qué pasa mi gente? I'm back. I am going to do the mid-year book freakout tag today. And I know it's been months since I've posted any content. A lot has been going on. I got a different job, so my schedule changed, and just trying to figure out when to film and still being able to read is a little bit difficult. But I think we finally have it down. So, I'm gonna start making more videos again, little by little, poquito a poquito. So why not start off with a YouTube classic? So today we're gonna be talking about the mid-year book freakout tag. I'll go ahead and link the video that I did last year down below. That way you can see how my reading has either improved, changed, how my taste changed, because I've been reading a lot more this year and from a lot more different genres. So as always, I leave timestamps down below. So without any further ado, let's get right into the video. So this weekend we're actually having a heat wave here in Oregon. It's like we broke the record for the hottest day here in Portland. I think it was 108 degrees. And I know, listen, in Southern California, 108 degrees is like the standard, but here it's not. So if you're going through a heat wave yourself, or if you live in a warm climate, make sure to stay hydrated. And even if you don't, make sure to drink some water. So this was originally created by two other booktubers. We'll link the original videos down below as well as their channels. So let's start off with question number one. What is the best book you've read so far this year? I always struggle with this question because does it mean the best book or does it mean my favorite book? Those two answers would be completely different. So I decided that I'm going to cheat and give you two books for this one. So the best book that I've read this year, I would have to say, is Piranesi. I really felt like Susanna Clarke was pushing boundaries in this book. It was just very creative, very thought out, and every step of the way was intentional, which is something that I truly appreciate. So if you don't know what this book is about, which I'm sure you do because it's very popular, so we follow this person who lives in this house, and this house is vast. It's huge. There's waves that come inside of it, and then there's big statues in every room. There is one other person that is inside of this house. They're called The Other, and they're working together on finding this great secret knowledge. But then we learn that there might be a third person who inhabits this house. And from there, we just start to learn more and more and more about this house. That's as much as I can tell you. It's one that I would suggest to just jump right in. And okay, here, listen. The first 10 chapters are so confusing. I was really confused. I didn't know where everything was going, but it starts to make sense. And by the end, you just appreciate it. So give it a try. If you gave up before chapter 10, push through it and then let me know if you like it. So what is my favorite book that I've read so far this year? For this one, I have to go with one that I read way back in January. I think it was either the first or the second book that I read, and this is Monday's Not Coming by Tiffany D. Jackson. For me, a favorite would be something that I just had a really good time reading, something that just kept me engaged, and I just wanted to keep reading, and I just wanted to be stuck in that book forever. Or it could be a book that I just had a very deep emotional connection with, and that elicited a deep emotional response. And Monday's Not Coming was that book for me. Weeks after I read it, I was still thinking about it, and while I was reading it, I remember sobbing. Once I was at the end of the book, I just cried for an hour. Not just like a tear running down my face. It was a sob. I was sobbing. It was an ugly cry. So definitely elicited a deep emotional response. And I feel like the topic that it speaks on is handled so well, and it's also something very important. So Monday's Not Coming is a young adult thriller / contemporary / literary fiction. I'm not really sure how to classify it, but it is young adult, and in it we follow our main character Claudia, and she's excited because she went away for the summer and she can't wait to see her best friend Monday. Her and Monday used to spend all of their time together, and then during the summer she left and she hasn't seen her in a while. And then she starts to realize that Monday isn't coming to school, and she rings her cell phone and she's not answering, and Monday's family seems to not really care that Claudia's looking for her. So Claudia starts investigating this because she thinks Monday's gone missing and no one is talking about it. And like I mentioned, it's just a very powerful story. It's a very important topic that Tiffany D. Jackson very craftfully navigates, especially for young adult readers. Certain topics like people going missing are definitely difficult topics to to write about and to talk about even in adulthood. So especially for young adults, I feel like Tiffany D. Jackson really wonderfully wrote this book and had a narrative that was very age appropriate but also challenges young adults, and you know, that's a good thing. So definitely my favorite book that I've read so far this year. I'm still thinking about it now, and actually just making this video I already want to reread it, but you know, I'm gonna hold off because I just need to read more by Tiffany D. Jackson in general. Okay, so question number 2 is the best sequel you've read. I actually haven't read many sequels this year. I've read maybe like 2 or 3. So also though, like, what do we mean by sequel? Do we mean literally the second book in a series? Or does sequel also mean any book that comes after the first? I don't know. So I chose The Well of Ascension by Brandon Sanderson. Definitely by far the best sequel that I've read this year. The Well of Ascension is also my favorite book within the Mistborn trilogy in general. I know that it's very slow paced, but I feel like there's so much character development that happens in that book, and there's so much information that we get, and that's when Sanderson really starts to, you know, throw more information at you, but like also slowly weave the narrative together in preparation for the Hero of Ages. Thinking back to it, I just love that book, and I just have to reread the Mistborn trilogy in general. Question number 3 is, what is a new release you haven't read but want to? So this is one that I actually already started, but I stopped reading it about 30 pages in, and that is Crying in H Mart. I stopped reading it because it was actually Ben's book. He bought it and I was like, ooh, new book, let me read it. But you know, he bought it because he wanted to read it. So then he picked it up and started reading it, and I started reading other stuff and forgot to come back to it. But that was a new release this year. It's by Michelle Zauner, I believe, and she is actually in a band, a one-person band, and she decided to write about her life and about her relationship with her mom. And it's, interestingly enough, she grew up here in Oregon, and I can't wait to get back into it because she speaks a lot on dualities, and she is biracial, and she talks about how that impacted her growing up and how certain cultural traditions were more prominent than others, and how this gave her a different perspective in life, but also how it impacted her growing up in a white ass town, you know, with white ass traditions, which is something that I think I can relate to. I hate it when at work they're like, oh, so what's your favorite Thanksgiving dish? And everybody's like turkey, or everybody's like mashed potatoes, and I'm like, I didn't grow up eating turkey and mashed potatoes. I grew up in a Mexican family. We had tamales, we had enchiladas, we had pozole. So whenever people hear that, they're like, that's not how you celebrate Thanksgiving. So it's like, hold up. First of all, we shouldn't even be celebrating Thanksgiving because we're literally celebrating genocide. So calm down. But yeah, anyways, off track. As you can tell, I'm very chatty today. Yeah, next question. Most anticipated release for the second half of the year. Honestly, there are so many books that are coming out in the later half of the year, but you know, I'm just gonna choose one. I'm gonna stick with one. And I think for me, that would be Velvet Was the Night, and this is by Silvia Moreno Garcia. I believe it's coming out in August, and like all of her books, these are set in Mexico, specifically set in 1970s Mexico. And the little that I know about it is that we have this woman, and I can't remember what she does, like what her craft is. Her friend goes missing under suspicious circumstances, and so she starts to investigate, you know, what happened, where she is, and then what's going on. So what I really like about Silvia Moreno Garcia's books is that they're always fun and they're always engaging and easy to read and digest, but they also have this very serious undertone and message behind them, like Mexican Gothic. For example, Mexican Gothic, which is one of my favorite books by her, touches and speaks on colonialism, and I think Velvet Was the Night is going to touch on femicide. Femicide rates in Mexico have been increasing over the past decade or so, and the government isn't really doing much about it. Many people around the world don't know this, but yeah, that's one that is very anticipated for me. Okay, now we're getting into the difficult questions. So question number 5, what is your biggest disappointment this year? Let me start off by saying that just because this book didn't work for me, doesn't mean that it's not either a good book or I'm not trying to come for you, basically, is what I'm trying to say. I just didn't hit me the way that it hit most people, I think, and this was The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. I know that this book is a lot of people's favorite book of 2020 or 2021, whenever they read it. I read it in 2021. And I don't know, I just had so many hopes for it. So the primary reason this didn't work for me is because it felt like a because it felt like a self-help book that was disguised as a fiction book. And there's nothing wrong with self-help books. I have them, I read them, they help me out a lot. But it's the fact that it tries to pass off as something else. And I also didn't like this like overwhelmingly easy a narrative that it tried to portray. Like, so through my perspective, this book is trying to tell depressed ass people, if only you had a better outlook in life, your life would go so much better. As if systemic racism isn't a thing, as if microaggressions are not a thing, as if there's people out there who can't support themselves and have to literally give up mental health in order to survive because we don't have a livable minimum wage. So yeah, okay, yeah, if only we had a better outlook on life, yeah, their lives would be so much better. I hated that oversimplistic solution to people's problems. That rubbed me the wrong way. So yeah, it was a disappointment for me. So question number 6 is, what was your biggest surprise? And I struggled with this one. I actually had 2 written for this one, but I'm going to talk about the other book in a later prompt. But for me, it was Lakewood by Megan Giddens. The reason Lakewood was the biggest surprise for me was because I went into it knowing very little about it. It was just a book that I saw the cover of and I was like, oh, that looks interesting. And then I saw it was under the thriller sci-fi genre, so I was like, okay, let's do it. And I put it on hold through Libby and I got it and I started listening to it, not really knowing what it was about, but by the end of it I thought, so not only did it have a very engaging plot, but it also again talked about very important issues that either have happened, are happening, or just need to be talked about. Do you notice a trend here in the types of books that I like? So in Lakewood we follow Lena, who is a Black woman and her grandmother just died, and so her family is going through a lot. They're in a lot of debt. They don't really have, they haven't really had a lot of access to opportunity or jobs that pay well. So a lot of time a lot of their life has been living paycheck to paycheck with a lot of debt because of all of these medical bills. So Lena gets this notice of the study that's going on that pays significantly well, like almost too well. So she would be able to pay off her grandma's debt and medical bills that had been accumulating. She would be able to pay for her to go back to school. Her and her family would actually be able to thrive now instead of just surviving. So, weighing the pros and cons, she decides to participate in it. But sketch things start to happen. Like, they ask her to sign an NDA and she's not able to talk to anybody about this. They make her have this pretend job on paper and talk to her friends and family as if she were in this pretend job instead of on this study. So slowly the story starts to unveil these racist medical practices that have been going on for a long time, but that are specifically going on to Lena right now. And it just shocked me. Like, it was such a good story, but it, like, everything that happens in it also, like, was like, damn. Just like reading this book, I think of Henrietta Lacks. I think of the Tuskegee syphilis study that was done way back in the 90s. And, these events were real. It's a book that I just highly recommend that you read. It was just so good. I really enjoyed it. Question number 7 is favorite new author. And I would have to go with Brandon Sanderson. I ended up reading the Mistborn trilogy, and then I also read the thriller that he wrote with Mary Robinette Kowal. I am blanking on the name of it, but it's like a 4-hour audiobook. But anyways, yeah, I'm a really big fan of how Sanderson is able to create these big and immense worlds, but also have these very complex plots and these very intriguing characters, and then weave them all together into this explosive narrative. Like, it's fantastic. It's amazing how you have so many questions, and then at the end it's like, oh, yes, it all came together. But like, as a reader, you don't always see it until the end, and it's amazing. He's such a tight writer. Everything is intentional, and I love it. It's so good. So Brandon Sanderson, I'm hoping to read more of his works this year. I haven't gotten back into them. So many books to read, there's so many books to read in so little time, but definitely I want to start The Way of Kings sometime this year. We're gonna make it happen. Question number 8 is, who is your newest fictional crush? This one definitely has to go to Avasarala. If you don't know who she is a character in the Expanse series. She is this government person from Earth, and she's a badass. I had someone that I wanted to aspire to be like, it would be Avasarala. She's just like straight to the point, takes no bullshit, and she gets shit done. Like, I wish my supervisor was that way. Question number 9 is, who is your newest favorite character? And this would have to go to Kara from The Space Between Worlds by Micaiah Johnson. I really loved Kara. She was a very nuanced character in The Space Between Worlds, and I really like that she was morally gray. I hate it when we have characters that right off the bat you root for, or that have no character development or any growth. And I just love that she was just very complex and very gray, and at times you couldn't really understand why she did something she did, but then we start to get more into her motivations and we start to learn more about her, and you're like, damn, okay, yeah, I see, like, you were put in a very hard spot and I can see why that happened. So if you don't know what The Space Between Worlds is about, it's a soft sci-fi book and it talks about multiverses. And so we have Kara, who lives on one Earth, and as part of her job she travels to other dimensions to gather intel on them.
Sigo cruzando